Welcome to the Book Corner with me, Mish Atagana, a podcast for book lovers and book lovers adjacent. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the final episode of the season for the Book Corner with me, Mish Atagana. Can you believe it? It's been 10 episodes this season. Firstly, I want to say I'm just so grateful to all of you that listen to this podcast. I know it's my little pet project, and it's literally me waxing lyrical about just the things I love or the books I've been reading and enjoy, and just discussing it with you guys. But thank you so much for coming on this journey, and never fear, a new season is coming in a few months. But today I have a really special book, and I don't often kind of read a book that just has my heart so much, and not just with the writing but the story. But it's actually the book that inspired me to want to spend more time reading in 2024. So I thought it was apt for this book to be the final book of this season, where we purely discuss fantasy and sci-fi stories. The book in question, which is the book we'll be discussing today, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So I picked up this book, I want to say at an airport, naturally, as everything I do. Let me actually see. So I must have picked up at an airport. And I hadn't really heard a lot about it. I'd seen it on like bookstore lists and things like that displayed on shelves, but I didn't really know anything, not about the author or the story. But it looked pretty interesting. And the back of it, when I read the description in the back, I thought it was a lot of fun. So I bought it. I think in Johannesburg, at Johannesburg Airport, when I was leaving for somewhere, or in London. I bought it in London. I bought it in London on my way to Canada for New Year's Eve. And then I just started reading it on the plane. And let me tell you, I know, I always say to you guys, I started reading it on the plane and I couldn't put it down. I'm an obsessive reader. I'm going to read till it's done, right? But just the softness and the beauty of the story got me so much. I think this is a global phenomenon. Book is a Sunday Times bestseller, so I think a lot of people know about it. But I literally kind of got to the beginning of the story where we meet our main character, Addie LaRue, for the first time, and she's talking about this guy, and she's talking about how he's gonna forget her, and I was like, wait, what? And then we launch into our story, and we begin to get context of Addie and what's happening with her. And I was just thinking, just there, like, wow, what an incredible tool, storytelling tool, the way the story is being weaved together. So The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Guys, my podcast, as much as I try not to give you spoilers, if you don't want spoilers, I apologize, but I am going to give you spoilers because I cannot talk about the story without really talking about what happens in it proper. So Addie LaRue is a young woman who grew up in a small town of, I think, Vion in France. And she is, I think this was in the early 1300s or before. What I also quite like is that they put it's not it's Vion Soissons. Yeah, so it's 1700s. And I think we go back and forth in time. So I'm trying to think, the earliest part we have is, I think, the 1700s, I believe. Yeah, is the earliest the book goes. Again, this is the last book I read in 2023. And Addie lives in this little town with her parents and, this wise female character who is kind of like an aunt slash caretaker slash whatever you call it for her. And there's a part of the story that I really like is where she goes, that there's this matriarch aunt, wise old crazy woman that lives on the edge of town, at the edge of the forest, tells her never pray to the gods that answer after dark. And that line is very critical because it is literally at the core crux of our story. It is a thing that prompts what happens in our narrative of the story and our plot. So she kind of gets this advice is like, these are all the old gods of our land, right? And but you do not pray to the ones that answer after dark. And Addie's life, all she wants is to fall in love with the right person, but also see the world. She wants to go beyond this, little town of hers. Basic everyday dreams, meet a nice person, travel the world, don't be bound to anyone. So these are the things Addie wants. So she is now betrothed to this dude that she's supposed to marry, and she doesn't want to do it. And her parents are like, girl, you got to get married. You got to get married. So on her wedding day, she runs to the edge of the forest to this field pond area. And in her desperation and in her, darkest hour, she makes a plea to the gods and she begs and begs for them to save her from the fate she's about to get involved in. And unfortunately for our girl, she doesn't check to see who's going to answer her prayer. And a God answers, but it's a God that answers after sunset. So she has now inadvertently prayed to a God that answers after dark. Things do not go well. So he asks, what would you like? So she goes, I don't want to be bound to anyone. I want to be free. I want to be free to explore the world, to meet and choose who I end up with. I want to be free to live life by my rules and mine alone. And then he goes, for how long? And then she's kind of, what do you mean? It's like, is it for a year? Is it for 10 years? Is it for 20 years? How long do you want this life before I take your soul? Because your soul is the cost for this life. And Addie, being naturally apprehensive, goes, well, I don't know. I don't know how long will be enough for me to do and see all the things I want to do. Of which he goes, well, no, sorry, little girlie, you can't just have everything forever. You must give me something. There must be a price. There's a price. What is the cost? So she goes, okay, you can have my soul when I am done with it. So he appraises her and goes, all right, you can be free, not be bound or attached to anyone, and live a life of your choosing. And when you are done with your soul, you will come and give it to me. Great, this is done. But as you all know, it's not that easy. And again, we've already been warned that we shouldn't pray to gods that answer after dark. And baby girl, don't pray to a god that answers after dark. So the cost is higher than just your soul. And unfortunately for Addie, what that actually means is that no one will ever remember her. So she will meet someone, they will talk. As soon as they turn away from her or go into a different room, she doesn't exist to them. They forget her. And that's the cost because she hasn't given a timeline to when this ends. And naturally, this is a trick. No one gives you what you want for free. So this is a trick because at the end of the day, this God, devil, whatever she end up calling him, is going to want her soul. And what's better way to get that soul quicker than to frustrate her into giving that soul to him? So our story takes us through Addie's journey from the first years of getting this, gift, to how she kind of lives her life and the things she's seen and the way she's explored the world. But there is when I say there's an elegance and a beauty and softness to this way the story is written. I was in the middle of reading this. I started looking at other books by this author that I wanted to read, and I ended up buying like a bunch of her other books and reading them, but it's so artfully done. Like I think of Addie and I think of the story as a work of art. If I was walking through a gallery and each page or each chapter or each scene of the story, I could see a gallery wall of Addie's life and the beautiful, beautiful, elegant brush strokes and beautiful statues and beautiful photographs and mixed media. It's literally the way it reads to me anyway. I was talking to a friend of mine about this book, and he literally looked at me, he's like, that should be your finale book, one, for your podcast, but two, this book, the way you talk about this book, there's love in it. There really is. I feel, for me anyway. So now we see Addie. So the story primarily takes place for us in New York City, which is where Addie lives right now, and it's kind of 2014, I think 2014 to 2015. It takes place for the present time storytelling. And then the rest of it takes place in different parts of the world, but primarily in France. In the 1700s, like she lives through the revolution. She inspires artists, but no one can see her. You can't even see her in the work of art. You can't, if you take a photo of her, you will just see a blur in her face, but it would be like this incredible enigma that makes you want to know more, that makes you feel like you know something, but you're not quite sure what it is. Um, so for her, she's just kind of navigating this quite rather lonely and invisible life where she's inspired some of the greatest works of art and some of the greatest moments in history, but no one knows her name. No one knows who she is. So one day she goes into this bookstore. She can't get a job. She can't get an apartment. She doesn't have any money. So for her to, get a place to stay for the night, she's literally hustling. So she'll meet someone in a bar and go home with them, or she'll kind of know that this person is not home this week. So she'll go kind of hide out in their apartment. She'll go to restaurants and order something to eat. And as soon as hopefully the waiter sees her, remembers her and brings the food, or she'll order at a counter where they can remember her and give it to her. And as soon as they turn away, like she kind of slips out because she can't afford to pay for anything, right? Something like that. So one day she goes into this bookstore and she grabs this book and she's looking at the book, and then she walks out of the store because as soon as she leaves the room, no one remembers her. But this dude follows her out and goes, "Hey, you haven't paid for that book. This is not a library." And she's very confused by what's happening. She's not sure how he's remembered her, what is going on, why that's happening. And she's thinking it's just a fluke. And then he just lets her go. He's like, whatever, just take the book and go. So she's thinking this is just a fluke. Like, it's so random. So she goes back to the bookstore to try and return the book for cash because this is what she does, right? So she'll kind of steal something from a store, return it for an exchange or cash because they don't know. They don't remember her. And this guy goes, "Are you kidding me? You literally stole this book yesterday and you're trying to return it for cash. Like, are you blind? Are you dumb? What's happening?" Um, and then she's like confused, like, wait, how is this man remembering who I am? How is he possibly remembering me right now? And it literally is kind of the turning point of our story. Is like we now have a character who remembers her, who can remember her face and she can finally say her actual name for the first time. So her name is Adelaide, and it's literally the first time she's been able to say her actual name. So usually she uses fake names. She's like, my name is Jessica, my name is Natasha, my name is this and this. She hasn't been able to say her name since the day she made that deal. And the only person who knows her, who can say her name, is this demon, devil, whatever you call it, that she made this deal with. And here is another person in the whole universe who's able to remember her, and she doesn't understand why. So they start a relationship, and she kind of tells him about, this deal she made and the fact that she's forced to tell him because they go out and his friends will turn around and be like, oh, hi, who are you? And he'll be like, what do you mean, who are you? You just met this person. So eventually she had to kind of confess and be like, actually, this is, this is what's happening. This is this deal I made and whatnot. And he's all quiet, like, this is interesting. And it turns out, and again, this brings us back to the reason he remembers her. He too made a deal. So while Addie made a deal to be free from all bonds to other people, to not be attached to other people, to be able to live her life by her rules, her way, he made a deal so that when people look at him, they will see what they want the most, so what they desire the most. So for him, it's for his family to finally stop being disappointed. So when they see him, they can see a son that they're proud to have, the man that they always wanted him to be. And for women, when they see him, he can be their ideal man. He can be handsome or whatever it is. That's what they want. So for him, when Addie sees him, Addie sees someone who will remember her. So the way their curses, their curse now kind of, they work on each other. So at first when I was reading, I'm like, oh, do their curses counteract each other? No, it doesn't. They just work for each other. So Addie wants to be seen. Addie wants to be remembered, to be known, to be able to finally have some sort of attachment. And that's what she was able to get with him. Whereas in his case for Addie finally also just saw him for who he was, nothing more, nothing less. She had no expectations of him, no desires of him. So he also could be his own self fully with her. And so so they kind of carry on this story and this relationship where they deeply connect, but Addie is so afraid of Luke. So Luke is what she ended up calling like this after dark god in the story, and she's so worried that he is going to see what's happening and come and take it away. So she's very careful. She's always hiding. She doesn't want, a lot of things to happen. And I also like there's a lot of context between her and Luke as well, because when I think about the story and the way it's told, we have Addie, who's kind of our main character here, but there's all the characters around her, from her parents to the lady who lives at the edge of town who told her the story, to this guy who I've forgotten his name. What was the name of this guy in the story? Because we have his perspective. Henry, I think. Yeah. Henry. Is it Henry? No, it's not Henry. Is it? I forgot the name of the characters. Why am I forgetting the name of this character? I feel the guy. Yes, Henry. Henry is his name. Yeah, Henry's his name. So Henry and Henry's friends, and Luke, who's this demon. So we also get to see some of Henry's point of view in the way the story is told. So Henry's also one of our main characters, but the story, like I think 70% of the story really focuses on Addie. But we also get to see like Henry's point of view in terms of the story. So now we are here with Henry and Addie, and Addie's like, I know my deal. I have immortality, but immortality without ties. And this is 300 years later for Addie. So Henry deal is actually was for 1 year. He asked for 1 year, and that year is almost up, which means at the end of that year, he's going to die. Now, Addie doesn't want this to happen because she's fallen for him. She's grown ties with him and she's trying to figure it out. And Luke is lurking around the corner. And she's so worried that he's going to come and figure out a way to disrupt things. But also now knowing that Henry's deal ends at a certain time, there's going to be a whole thing. So now Addie has a choice to make. And it's so beautiful, just the way when I think about how we navigate the impending death of Henry in the story, to the empty and long future that Addie has. And then to Luke, who it's so fascinating also the way V. Schwab writes this devil, god, demon character, is that there are parts of him where there's a vengefulness which is expected, right? A cunning trickery about him which is expected. But there's also a vulnerability in the way in which he addresses Addie. So there's also a part of him that seems to long for her and yearn for her. And I don't know if we can fully say he is falling in love with her, or if he's wanting to feel something with her that he may not be capable of feeling because of the kind of being that he is, or if it's also is the millennia, like he there's a part where he makes a whole speech about how he was alive before this little world, this wild little world became a thing, and the millennials he's lived, even the lives, the souls he's taken, like they kind of show these famous artists and famous scientists who are people who made deals with him. And I think, but for him, she is, aside from the fact that she is, seems to be this unattainable soul because she keeps refusing, no matter how hard he makes her life, no matter how problematic he makes her life, she just refuses to give him what he wants, right? Like she doesn't want to give up her soul to this person. And I feel that there's something that draws him to her because of that. Like there's a desperation to know her, to want her, because of that. So I found it very, very, very interesting to kind of read also how his character evolves, the pettiness he brings in, but also the danger. There's something about toying with powerful men, especially powerful men, um, that 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 are vengeful. There's such a, like I got so scared for her in the last kind of pages of this, but I also enjoy, like, Addie's curse isn't broken. I told you guys this. I cannot tell you the story without giving you spoilers. I really can't. I apologize, but we don't break Addie's curse, right? I'm not going to tell you whether or not we break Henry's curse either. I think maybe that I can leave for you. But what I do find is Addie decides to play a very cunning and a very dangerous game at the end. And one thing she does achieve is the world knows her name and they know her story. They might not remember her, the individual, but her story is known to the world, right? And I love the way in which she managed to think about that. And she's like, I've had 300 years to be the person who kind of had to figure life out the way it is. Now, the way the story kind of concludes feels like she's going to spend the next 300 years wearing down her her captor, because in the end she is captive to the deal she's made. And I think she's, the way the story ends for me feels like she's going to spend the rest of her her mortality, immortality, you know, slowly and cunningly breaking the chains of her deal, if possible. Like it's literally, it's such an interesting twist on a Faustian deal, guys. It's such an interesting twist. So I loved this book so much, and um, I'm gonna use these words again. It is soft. It is elegant. It is beautiful. It is artful. The way it is written, and I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed reading it. So thank you again for joining me on the book corner as we talked about my favorite read of last year, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It is while reading this book, I thought to myself, 2024, you have to be dedicated to reading so much more fantasy and discovering stories by new authors in this genre. I think fantasy is having a moment right now, and I'm so here for it. So as you guys know, I expect, I said 2024 is going to be a majority of fantasy read, and it will be. I am kind of looking at a split of 70% fantasy sci-fi to 30% fiction or speculative fiction. I think season 2 will see that split in the books I talk about on this podcast. We did season 1 was purely fantasy and sci-fi, but I've read so many incredible other books in the last couple of months that I still want to share with you, and I hope I get to be able to share some of them with you. Someone DM'd me and said I should add a segment to this podcast on what I'm currently reading. So as of this moment, I just finished reading the Devabad trilogy. If you follow me on socials, you'll see that I've been utterly obsessed. I'm hoping I will talk about the Devabad trilogy in the next season of this podcast. I'm also kind of looking at a bunch of other books right now, but I finished reading the last book of the Devabad trilogy last night. And I hear there's a fourth book that looks at stories from Devabad that take place between before, during, and after the trilogy. So I think I'm going to pick that up. I just love that world so much. I don't want to leave yet. I really don't want to leave yet. And then I got sent some books by Pan Macmillan. The Stolen Heir and The Prisoner's Throne. So I'm also hoping to get into those weekends. So that's kind of my TBR right now. But again, thank you so much for being a part of this incredible journey with me. And I can't wait to talk to you guys in season 2. Send your book recommendations to me. I must see your book recommendations. So thanks for joining me again. I'm Misha Tagana, and this has been the Book Corner.